Chapter 236 Destination. August 10th, 2023. Currently inside a moving bus filled with people, majority of them being teenagers dressed in identical clothing. Hiro's figure could be seen beside the window in the middle row of the bus. While his eyes remained shut, his head, which was leaning against the seat, was swinging freely along with the motion of the bus. Time and again, while the warm rays of the sunlight, which penetrated its way from the gap of the dangling curtain, fell upon his sleeping face, his fair skin glowed like a golden sculpture under light. However, not only Hiro, countless other kids who were present in the bus were in similar condition as him. While some covered their face with scarf, jersey, and other clothes to veil themselves from the light, some were leaning their head against the seat in front of them. With only few being exceptions who were either listening to music on their headphones while gazing outside the window or reading books, most of them were dozing currently. And while most of the curtains and windows in the bus remained shut, some were open. And from those open windows, a refreshing gust of cold wind was blowing while carrying the fresh scent of the nature. Along with the wind, golden rays of the sunlight was also creeping inside the bus from those open windows, making the interior of the bus glow in golden colors. Rustling sound of the wind and flapping sound of the curtains as it danced along with the wind was filling the entire bus. And coupled with the soothing golden light of the sun, the ambience around the interior of the bus was quite dreamy. Just as one of the teenagers seated in front of Hiro pushed aside the curtain beside him and opened the window, a gust of cold breeze came rushing towards Hiro, in turn sending a chill to his warm body, forcing him to open his eyes. Along with the flapping curtain beside him, his hair also dangled freely as it danced along with the wind coming from the open window in front of him. Feeling the sensation of the cold wind brushing past his face, Hiro tried to open his eyes. However, because of the wind coming from in front of him, and also the golden light, which directly fell onto his eyes, he immediately shut his eyelids. Once again, Hiro then tried to slowly lift his eyelids. And as he squinted his eyes, he was graced with the sight of molten sky, glowing in golden, yellow, red, and orange hues. Dreamy bubbles of golden light filled part of his vision as he looked at the setting sun in the distant horizon. Although the light was somewhat overbearing to look at, it wasn't bright enough to hurt his eyes. After some seconds, Hiro finally opened his eyes fully. The distant hills where the golden rays of the setting sun was flowing smoothly was glowing ethereally, while the molten clouds which were hovering above the setting sun and hills was making the scenery extremely picturesque to look at. Sparse forest consisting of various trees, which stretched from the foot of the mountain, was ending its trail after reaching the periphery of the field where different crops were planted. Breathing in the fresh air coming from the open window and looking at the picturesque scene outside the window, Hiro's heart was filled with tranquility while his eyes were glowing warmly. His face solemn and his mood tranquil, Hiro continued to look at the scenery outside the window without uttering a single word. He was completely lost at the moment. At times his vision was obstructed by trees as the bus passed through the forest, and at times his vision was obstructed by some electric poles erected beside the road. It was evident from the vast field outside the window that currently they were moving along the countryside. Although it only felt like it happened yesterday, almost about half a year has passed since Kawasaki's triumph over Seigen Tosu. During that time period, nothing much had taken place in Hiro's life. Training, playing football, studying, goofing around, his life had mostly revolved around football. For some break, the league had already resumed, and right now, half the matches of the season had already been concluded as well. However, this time around, they hadn't won every matches of the league like the previous time. Although they were comfortably sitting at the top of the league, Kawasaki had also lost 3 games out of 11 games they played so far. Some senior players who had graduated high school had left the team, while some fresh players like Yuya and Shunta had moved up the ranks and joined the team. Hiro's goal tally was still as impressive as ever in the league. With 11 goals under his name from 7 starts, he was once again dominating the score chart of the East League. Coming back to the present, after some moment of sightseeing, Shun, who was sleeping beside him with a thin scarf wrapped around his eyes, pulled down the scarf and spoke in his sleepy voice. "Are we there yet?" Hiro replied softly while keeping his gaze fixated at the scenery outside the window. "No, it might take some more time." Casting its ethereal rays above the hills, forest, field, and every surface in his vision, as if the sun was chasing him, it was following him everywhere while the bus was moving forward to its destination. The view of Chinese Yawn. Countryside is no different than Japanese countryside. Yawn, mumbled Shun while yawning. With the World Cup nearing, currently they were in China to participate in the Asian qualifiers. To participate in the U17 World Cup, which was going to be held in Indonesia in November, 20 elite teams from Asia were competing for a spot in the World Cup in this Asian qualifiers. Teams were split into groups of 5 into 4 different groups, A, B, C, and D. and Japan were placed in Group B along with countries like India, Vietnam, Jordan, and Philippines. However, among these 20 teams, only 2 were going to participate in the World Cup, with Indonesia being exceptions since they were hosting the World Cup, so they were getting a free pass. Hiro pretended to ignore Shun's rants as he kept focusing at the beautiful scenery outside the window. While looking at the scenery outside the window, his thoughts started to drift elsewhere. It's a pity that we won't get to face South Korea until the final, thought Hiro as he was looking forward to playing against South Korea. Not because he held any animosity against South Korea, but because South Korea was one of the most toughest teams in the Asian qualifiers. And if his memory served right, then along with Japan, it was also one of the teams which made it to the World Cup. Because of the influence of players like Heung-min Son, Hwang Hee-chan, Kim Min-jae, Lee Kong-in, and many other famous Korean footballers who played overseas, Korean football was developing rapidly. And because of the fact that Japan and South Korea were close-door neighbors, and also both were one of the most powerful teams in Asia, there was a feeling of rivalry between the two countries. South Korea was one of the most difficult opponents to play against in these qualifiers. Some other teams which would be feared were Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Malaysia, Yemen, and also the dark horses India and Vietnam, which were both in their groups. The qualifier would have been even more tough if the teams from Oceania, such as New Zealand and Australia, joined the qualifier as well. However, Oceania, they were holding their own qualifier. I sincerely thank the organizers for placing us in such an easy group, chuckled Shun, his tone carrying mockery and thankfulness. Sure enough, he was taking other teams in his group lightly. His tone filled with arrogance got on Hiro's nerves as he shot a cold gaze at Shun. While giving side eyes to Shun, Hiro's eyes glowed with a cold glow. His tone deep and his words threatening. Hiro reprimanded Shun's statements. What makes you so sure that we'll come out on top? Shun, who wasn't looking at Hiro's face, failed to notice Hiro's cold gaze. And also because of the sound of the wind, he couldn't hear Hiro's tone clearly. Thus, he had absolutely no idea that his words had pissed Hiro. Because they're all small fry, replied Shun casually. His tone extremely proud and his face smug. Sure enough, he didn't consider the team and his groups as threats. Although Shun had a hard-working and unwielding personality, Shun also had a proudful personality. As there's a saying, there's no such thing as perfect humans. And just like the saying, Shun also had his flaws. And that flaw was his arrogant personality. He took pride in his skills, and he also learned from his failures, but at the same time, he also liked to flaunt his skills. Chapter 237 Resort. After about 15 minutes of bus ride, when the setting sun finally shot its final dying rays atop the western hills, the bus, which was carrying the players of Japan national U-17 team, stopped at the entrance of the resort where they were going to spend their night. The entrance leading to the main building of the resort was huge. Made up of metal, it was coated with gold paint, and just like a gate to a mansion owned by nobles, different intricate patterns carved in the metallic gate was making it seem quite opulent. However, at the moment the gate was closed. Honk! Honk! The bus driver honked a few times to alert the guards about their arrival. Hearing the irritating sound of the horn, although the guards of the resort didn't arrive immediately, few players inside the bus immediately woke up from their slumber and started to grumble irritatedly. HM, please stop. Yawn. Are we there? Evidently, most of them were suffering from jet lag, and right now, they'd eat a horse for a chance to get a peaceful sleep. Few players covered their ears as they buried their face in the clothes which they were using to block the shade. Hiro, on the other hand, was captivated by the silhouette of the castle-like resort located at a certain distance away from him. Damn, that's the resort we are staying in today? That's more like a castle than a resort, thought Hiro while looking at the silhouette of the mansion glowing with lights, located at a certain distance away from him. Finally, after a few seconds, the guards of the resort arrived in front of the bus and checked few things before opening the main gate of the resort. As the gate split open, bus driver stepped on the gas pedal and the bus started moving once again. It was already dark outside, and the pathway leading to the resort was lit by beautiful lampposts. Lush green bushes and flower beds, which were planted at either side of the pathway, further accentuated the beauty of the paved pathway leading to the main building of the resort. Looking at the view outside the window, Hiro felt like he was seated inside a luxurious carriage moving along a flower-paved pathway leading to a majestic castle. In the west horizon, the once molten clouds had now lost their glow, and the once bright sky was now filled with the shimmering lights of the flickering stars. And relatively high up in the sky among the stars, crescent moon hung freely, casting its luminous glow across the surface and the entire night sky. Maybe it's because the resort was built in such a remote place, or maybe not many guests were staying in the resort right now. Nothing much could be heard other than the moving sound of the vehicle and rustling sound of wind as it made contact with the leaves of the trees and plants. It was quite peaceful. Buzz, buzz. Occasionally, buzzing noises of cicada and different nocturnal insects could also be heard. The more closer the bus got to the main building, the more clear the sight of the main building got. Lit by countless lights, decorated artistically with marbles, its walls were well polished and colored beautifully. Its corridors lit by expensive chandeliers which hung freely in its ceilings. Beautifully sculpted white pillars which supported its frame made it look like a luxurious mansion straight out of fantasy world. And just in front of the three-story villa which stretched far and wide, a medium-sized fountain was erected. Finally, as the bus arrived at the front door, it stopped. And as the bus stopped, the automatic door of the bus opened with the push of a button. One of the coach who was seated at the front row got up and began to wake up the players. Everyone get up. We are here. Without any further delay, exit the bus one by one in a queue without pushing. Some players started to stretch their hands as they spoke. Arg. Finally. Damn. That was a long bus ride. It's only been 45 minutes. Chattering such, one by one, everybody started to exit the bus. Some took quite a lot of time because of their luggage, while some took time arranging their stuffs. Eventually, after 5 minutes, as everybody boarded off the bus, Coach Kazan started taking attendance of the players. And while Coach Kazan was taking attendance, an elderly man dressed in fine clothes walked out of the villa, followed by few other people who seemed like staffs working in the resort, wearing a bright, amicable smile on his face. Evidently, that elderly man was the owner of the resort. Now one may wonder why the owner of the resort came in person to greet them. After all, they weren't neither famous celebrities nor VIPs. But it wasn't to greet the players or any other person. That owner had walked out in person to greet his acquaintance, who happened to be manager Haruki. Well, Coach Haruki was a reputed coach, so it wasn't that strange for him to be acquainted with the owner of the resort. Who knows what sort of connections he's got. However, one thing was certain. He was definitely someone who couldn't be trifled with. During the process of taking attendance, while looking at the scene of the owner of the resort talking amicably with manager Haruki, Hiro finally understood the reason behind them staying in such a luxurious resort. With national team's budget, how could they afford to stay in such an opulent-looking resort? But the scene of the owner and manager Haruki talking amicably answered all his doubts. After some moments, all of the players were led to their room. While walking along the hallway and path leading to their room, players of the national team passed through many majestic statues, armors, expensive paintings, and expensive decorations. Passing through such lavish decorations, many players' jaws dropped time and again as they walked past those decorations. Sure enough, one thing was certain. The resort they were staying in was definitely out of their budget under normal circumstances. Chapter 238, Provocative Words. After spending a peaceful night at the luxurious resort, currently players of National U17 team were gathered in a pitch which looked like some kind of training facility. Right in the morning, after having a lavish breakfast in the resort, they were transported to this training facility. Evidently, they were only staying at the resort for a night and not for their entire trip. That sleep I had yesterday in those comfy beds, it's the best sleep I had in my entire life till now. I wish I could stay there a little longer, spoke Shun while adjusting his gloves. His eyes were reflecting a sense of longing right now, while his tone, filled with grief, was like that of a person who was separated from his or loved ones. Yutaka, who was fixing his jersey, standing beside Hiro and Shun, chuckled as he nodded his head in agreement. I agree. That sleep was the best I had till now. However, that lobster meat we had in this morning tasted even better, Yutaka answered while nodding his head. Talking about the lobster meat, Yutaka's thought drifted to the moment they had their breakfast today. Thinking about it the moment, he subconsciously started to drool. Although Hiro shared the same feelings as the two of them, he was a bit hesitant to express his feelings openly like those two. Thus, he kept a poker face and continued to remain silent. Sure enough, because of their stay in such a luxurious resort, morale of the players in the training facility was quite high even this early in the morning. Moments like this made the players extremely grateful that they were playing football. Life of luxury. Who doesn't dream about it? Playing football to earn money. What's wrong with it? Everybody have their own motive to play football. And passion alone won't feed you. So if you're one of those people who curse players for selecting money, then you're just a hypocrite. Just then, while the three of them were conversing with each other, one of their teammates approached them. Black hair, eerie black eyes, and a cold, indifferent expression as if he was looking down on everyone. Out of nowhere, Tominaga Najichi walked towards Hiro while exuding an aura of arrogance around him. Since he was Yutaka's club teammate, Yutaka immediately rushed forward to face him upon seeing Najichi walking towards him, thinking that Tominaga approached them because he had something to talk about with him. Are you looking for me, Captain? However, Tominaga Najichi walked past him without uttering a single word, totally ignoring Yutaka's presence. Yutaka was baffled by Tominaga's attitude. Then again, he kept his eyes fixated on him with a perplexing look on his face. Tominaga was headed towards Hiro, who was currently stretching his legs. Winner of Takamoto Cup, Takahashi Hiro, coldly spoke Nagichi as he approached Hiro. His voice sounded neither amicable nor malicious. But sure enough, he hadn't approached Hiro to befriend him or ask for some suggestions. Turning behind to look at the source of the sound, Hiro found Nagichi staring at him with his cold black eyes. Yes, answered Hiro as he looked Nagichi in the eyes without wavering. We have some accounts left to be settled, mumbled Nagichi while shooting cold glares at Hiro. Hearing Nagichi's words, his eyes opened wide and a big question mark appeared atop his head. Huh? What account? Thought Hiro as he heard Nagichi's words. He was completely dumbfounded by Nagichi's words. After all, despite meeting once previously, it was his first time talking to Nagichi. Thus, he had absolutely no idea about what Nagichi was talking about. Sensing danger, Shun, who was standing beside Hiro, immediately walked in front of Nagichi as he felt like Nagichi was there to find some troubles with Hiro. His tone a bit harsh and his gazes glowing with cold light, Shun confronted Nagichi without any fear. What account? Would you mind sharing with us? Seeing the scene taking place in front of his eyes, Yutaka immediately rushed towards the direction where the three of them were gathered. At one side, it was his club's captain, and at another side, it was his friends. Although he found himself in dilemma, he knew that he had to do something to separate the three of them. Thus, he rushed towards them with an intention of preventing conflicts. Tamanaga Nagichi averted his gaze from Shun as he spoke coldly. Scram, you small fry. I don't have any issues with you. As if Shun wasn't even worth looking at, Tamanaga didn't even bother to stare at Shun. Hearing such provocative words, the rage inside Shun started to bubble like boiling tar. With his fist clenched, he shot gaze full of rage towards Tamanaga Nagichi. It was evident that Shun was about to explode. Yutaka, who was rushing towards them with the intention of solving the conflict, his heart sank as he heard such provocative words from his captain's mouth. It's over, Yutaka thought as he stopped in his tracks. Just when Shun was about to raise his fist, Hiro stretched his hands to grab his. Feeling the sensation of touch, Shun's gaze averted from Tamanaga Nagichi for the first time since he approached Hiro. Looking at Hiro's hands, he rolled his eyes towards Hiro's face. Hiro was gesturing him to calm down. Immediately, Shun loosened his strength as he relaxed his fingers. Hiro then slowly rose and asked coldly, So what accounts are you talking about? Locking eyes with Nagichi, he coldly stared him in the eyes without blinking his eyes. His tone sounded extremely arrogant as he spoke. You might have beaten me previously in the selection camp, and I was quite regretful that I didn't make it to the finals. But since we're both here, let's have a duel. PFT what? Duel? So you were here to ask for a duel? Hiro laughed inwardly as he found the situation quite funny after hearing Nagichi's words. All along he had approached Hiro just to ask him for a duel, and all along he had thought that Nagichi was going to talk about something serious. However, it was only a challenge request. While the way he spoke, it didn't seem like a request. It sounded more like a threat. Still, it was only a challenge. Hiro loosened his tensed expression as he answered, I don't mind competing against you. But what do you want to compete against? Since you're good at free kicks, let's do a free kick challenge, spoke Nagichi with the same indifferent tone. Based on his expression and tone, it seemed like he was quite serious about the challenge. However, he acted the same since the moment he approached him. So who knows if he was serious or not. Ding! New quest unlocked. Defeat Tamanaga Nagichi. Chapter 239 Taste of His Own Medicine. Just as Tamanaga Nagichi spoke about the theme of the challenge, sound of the notification from the system started ringing in his ears. Hearing the sound of the notification, for split seconds Hiro's gaze averted from Tamanaga Nagichi before it landed on Nagichi once again. Checking the contents of the quest, Hiro subtly lifted the corner of his lips as he let out a sly smile. A quest out of nowhere? Right what I needed. With Roberto Carlos's free kick, this quest is going to be a piece of cake, thought Hiro while cackling inwardly. Sure enough, Hiro had forgotten that he had already lost that talent quite a long time ago. Just as he was thinking about using the talent Roberto Carlos's free kick, a sudden thought flashed in his mind as he was hit by a sudden realization. Right, I don't have that talent anymore. How could I forget? Thinking about the moment where he had lost the talent, his smile faded away and his expression turned blank all of a sudden. A sudden feeling of emptiness gnawed upon him. So, do you have the guts to accept my challenge, Takahashi Hiro? Firmly questioned Nagichi while staring at Hiro with his eerie black pupils. Hiro, whose eyes were fixated at Nagichi, rolled his pupils above Nagichi's head. Atop his head, the holographic blue panel of the system was showing its contents. However, right now, as he was faced with Nagichi's question, other contents of the quest seemed blur as his eyes were only focused on two things. Reward. Host can select one item as per his wish from the system shop. Failure. You'll lose half of your attribute points. Currently, Hiro had around 300 attribute points, which he was saving to upgrade the system. Obviously, he could have also upgraded his attributes. However, after weighing the pros and cons, Hiro had found it more feasible to upgrade the system for long-term benefit. Tasting the horror of the failures after that final match between the champions of East League and West League had left a deep impression on him. Not only that encounter with his past self and his dream had made him think about long-term, it had also made him more wise than before. While skimming through the contents of the quest, Hiro suddenly thought of a devilish method to minimize his loss. What if I spend all these attribute points right now? That way I won't have to lose any points even if I failed. Ha ha ha. Note, the quest has been issued taking your current attribute points into consideration. So your attribute points are freezed at the moment. Just when he was planning about exploiting another loophole of the system spilled water on his plans, and once again, his smile faded away, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth, in turn causing him to contort his face in irritation. Hiro's actions of looking away from him gave Tamanaga Nagichi an impression that Hiro wasn't taking him seriously, which further fueled his desire to crush Hiro. Although unintentional, Hiro's goofy behavior was getting on Nagichi's nerves. However, he still maintained his composure and continued to show that same indifferent expression. Finally, Hiro sighed helplessly as he replied, sluggishly, "Fine, then let's do it. But I'm sure you wouldn't want either Hanagaki or Shun to be the keeper. Or do you want to go with Hanagaki as the keeper?" Hanagaki was the keeper of Vissel Kobe U18, also the ranked 2 keeper in the national U17 team. As Hiro asked question to Nagichi, he shook his head. "Then that led us with only one option, Kurosawa," mumbled Hiro after thinking deeply for a short while. As he mentioned about Taki, both of their gaze drifted towards Taki, who was currently stretching his upper body. Then Kurosawa Taki, it is Nagichi agreed with Hiro's suggestion. And as such, the two of them asked Kurosawa Taki to be the keeper for this challenge. "What are those 3 doing?" questioned one of the player as he found Hiro, Nagichi, and Taki preparing for the challenge. "Are those 2 going to compete?" "Oh, seems like they're dueling. Isn't that Hiro and Tamanaga Nagichi? Those 2 giants are competing? Damn, I want to see who comes out on the top." Such gossips filled the entire pitch as Hiro and Nagichi's duel piqued interest of every player in the training camp right now. The gossip about them dueling spread like wildfire, and soon it got to the ears of every player present in the field. And while Hiro and Nagichi discussed about who was going to shoot first, players of National U17 team started to flock around the side of the pitch where they were going to conduct their duel. It's going to be best of 5. 1 from the left corner, 1 from the right corner, 1 from the 20 yards, 1 from 30 yards, and 1 from the half line. "Do you agree with this setup?" asked Nagichi as he explained about the detail of the duel, while pointing at the spots from where they were going to take the free kick. Hearing his explanation, Hiro nodded his head at first. Then again, he raised a question. What about the walls? Or are we going to shoot without any walls? Because of the ongoing situation, Nagichi had forgotten to think about that aspect. However, even though he had forgotten, he didn't lose his cool. Instead, he immediately answered in a haughty tone. "How can it be considered free kick without any walls? Obviously, we'll select the tallest players to act as the walls." Saying so, Nagichi walked towards the crowd and brought some players along with him, each and every single one of them being either the tallest or sharpest or with high jumping power. Sure enough, he wanted to defeat Hiro fair and square. Feeling Nagichi's earnest intentions, Hiro let out a subtle laughter. Seems like he's damn serious about it. Then why don't we check his stats? As he muttered those words, he willed the system to use magic vision on Nagichi in his heart. Name, Tamanaga Nagichi. Overall grade, B+. Potential? Wow factor, free kick specialist A, penalty specialist, poacher B, powerful long-range shot B+, instant acceleration C. Damn, every single one of those wow factor corresponds well with his position. Mumbled Hiro in awe as he witnessed Nagichi's stats. Tamanaga Nagichi was a striker. To be more precise, he was that typical number 9, whose sole job was to score goals. In short, he was like a goal machine in development. While he was still in awe, he chuckled as he figured the reason behind the theme of the duel. Haha, so that's why you chose this challenge, huh? Maybe I'm tasting my own medicine this time. Hiro laughed heartily as he thought about how all those players felt when he had such amazing talent to score free kick from anywhere. Chapter 2, 40 Cheeky Shot. After bringing some players to act as the walls for the duel, Hiro and Nagichi played a game of rock, paper, scissors to determine the order of the free kick taker. Hiro won the game, and hence Tamanaga Nagichi was forced to take the free kick first. Even so, he didn't look worried in the slightest. In fact, his expression was more sharper than ever, and his confidence was at an all-time high. Just like Hiro and Nagichi, Taki, who had agreed to help them conduct this challenge, had his own intention. He wasn't helping them out of goodwill. Neither was he helping them because they were his teammates. He had his own motive to help them in this challenge. Mostly he wanted to impress the coaches who were currently watching the duel taking place in the pitch from the sidelines. Indirectly, he wanted to appeal the coaches to increase his playing minutes. He knew that with Shun and Hanagaki in the team, his chances of getting any playing minutes was pretty slim. Thus, right now he was prepared to stop any shots shot at him. Obviously, it was a good thing, since that way the result would be even more fairer. The blazing hot sphere which hung relatively high up in the eastern horizon was a kaleidoscope of yellow and orange. Spreading its majestic aura upon the surface, it was warming the entire surface. The azure blue sky being its playground and the fluffy white clouds being its companion. The sun was as lively as ever, even in this early in the morning, signifying the arrival of the summer. Despite the sun shining upon him, Nagichi's eyes were glowing with a cold light while he was preparing to take the free kick. Enveloped by an aura of coldness, his eyes looked as sharp as ever while he focused at the ball. Just by looking at his stance and eyes, one could tell how focused he was at the moment. In front of him, a wall of 5 players was erected. And since he was taking the free kick from the left flank, just about 10 m away from the goal line, the shooting angle was quite tight. Huff! Exhaling a deep breath, Nagichi then started his run-up. At the same time, Taki squinted his eyes, focusing intently at the ball. Using power from this angle and at this distance was like a suicide. The ball was bound to go astray or hit the wall or get blocked by the keeper. Thus, the only ideal way to score from this spot was to either curl the ball or shoot knuckleball. And Hiro, who had seen Nagichi's stat, was almost sure that Nagichi wasn't a technical player. Sure, his shots were impressive. Sure, his stats were impressive. And sure, his wow factors were impressive. However, he was still lacking in technical aspects. Tominaga Nagichi simply wasn't a technical player. Thus, as predicted by Hiro, Nagichi went with power. Instead of curling the ball at the top right corner, which was the most ideal position to hit the ball from this angle, Nagichi hit a powerful shot, which in turn got deflected as it hit the wall of players. TCH. Nagichi bitterly clicked his tongue as he witnessed his shot failing to pass the wall. Oh, missed. Damn, that was a powerful shot. However, as he received that shot, one of the players in the wall fell on his ass after defending that powerful shot. Immediately, other players who were beside him started checking his condition as they helped him get up. Damn, that was a powerful shot, mumbled that player while letting out a subtle laughter. His forehead as red as tomato. He was trying to act tough at the moment, despite feeling a burning pain. While the bunch of players who were surrounding the player who just fell down were making jokes and laughing heartily, Hiro displayed a worried look on his face. His brows knotted and his face ghastly pale. He was pursing his lips while looking at the scene of the players laughing heartily. Sure, that shot was powerful, but if they can't even handle that much power, then how are they going to handle African players? They shoot like missiles. Panicked Hiro while thinking about the miserable state of his teammates. His worries weren't baseless. No disrespect to any other countries out there in the world, but young African players are really a force to be feared. Although none of the African countries had yet to win the Senior World Cup, this U17 World Cup, which they were going to participate, was heavily dominated by African countries. Although the current U17 champion was Brazil, a footballing powerhouse nation, still the team with the most championship with 5 titles under their name, it was Nigeria, a team from Africa. Immediately seeing such state of his teammates, Hiro was brought back to reality. His dream of lifting the trophy seemed quite far-fetched. After that blunder, Nagichi scored 2 goals out of 5 free kicks. He missed the next free kick, which he shot from the right flank. However, he converted both the free kicks from the 20-yards line and 30-yards line. And even the last free kick, which he shot from the half line, he only missed it because Taki made a brilliant save. No doubt, his ability shone brilliantly when he could shoot from distance. The result of his performance had greatly shaken him, as his eyes no longer radiated an aura of confidence. His face a little pale than before. Sure enough, he had taken a hit. The fact that he knew about Hiro's feat of scoring from the half line further intensified his worries. And right now, his worries were evident from the wrinkles on his forehead. However, what he didn't know was that Hiro couldn't shoot like before. If only he knew about this secret, his worries wouldn't have been this severe. Now, it was Hiro's turn to take the free kicks. During the process, while Tominaga Nagichi was taking the free kick, after taking his reduced power into consideration, he had deduced that the only way he could win this challenge was by scoring the first 3 goals. Since he was a technical player, and with the loss of such a precious talent, he could only thrive in short-distance free kicks at the moment. He had no other choice but to score those first 3 free kicks if he wanted to win. However, with such tight angle, it was easier said than done. With that being said, Hiro was currently taking his stance beside the ball, preparing to take his first free kick. As much as Nagichi was worried about Hiro's free kicks, Taki, who had faced him once, was even more worried, and so were other players acting as the wall. For sure he's going for top right corner, thought Taki, while staring at the ball. For sure he's going to curl the ball above our head. I need to jump as high as I can to block the ball. Such were the worries players in the walls were thinking about while looking at Hiro with grim look on their faces. And as Hiro started making his run up, some players in the wall gulped their saliva before jumping as high as they can. However, the next moment, as they leapt from the ground, their expression turned from grim to shock. They were utterly stupefied. Why, you may ask? It's because Hiro shot the ball right beneath their legs. Instead of shooting the ball above their heads, he shot below their legs, making use of the gap created by the players in the walls as they leapt from the ground. Taki's situation wasn't any better either. Thinking that Hiro was going to shoot at the top right corner, he had jumped towards the top right corner to have a better probability to save the ball. Making a cheeky shot, Hiro scored the first goal.